Okay, hopefully you guys can see my screen. So in today's tutorial, I pasted a bit of the agenda on the chat. So we'll do things like editing configuration files on YAML files if you guys haven't done that yet. Things like running multiple bots and how to update them. We released a new version of Hummingbot yesterday. So one of the reasons why I wanted to run the update is because on our testing server, we actually have to update these bots. So I'll show you how that's done. And yesterday, we also released a new version, 0.27.0. So here, in addition to a few fixes, different reported bugs, things like that, we added 2 new features. So order refresh tolerance, as well as this price band feature. So in today's tutorial, I'll go over what those are and how you can set them and when you would want to use those kind of things. Some other things, we'll go over some other safety features, things like kill switch. So we recommend everyone to use that. Definitely for first-time users, new users, definitely to configure kill switch. Things like field order delay, inventory skew, and then lastly, we'll go over multiple orders mode. So with that being said, I guess we'll get started. So I think, so you can see here, I have 2 terminal windows right now. Let me just go to one. I'm actually running this tutorial on these servers on Docker. So this is on Linux, on AWS. So you can see here, I'm running multiple bots at the moment. When I list, I'll just close one of the windows. Hopefully you guys can see this. Let me just clear the screen. So typically when you're running multiple bots, the easiest way to do that is using Docker. So we can see actually, if you go to our docs site, if you search for multiple bots, the easiest way to do that is using Docker. The other way to do it is installing from source. So basically, Hummingbot right now, it's capable of trading a single pair at a time. So what that means is if you wanted to trade multiple pairs, you're going to have to run multiple instances of it. That's why we recommend Docker, because Docker allows you to run instances pretty easily. So you can see here, this server has 2 bots. One is just called default Hummingbot instance. The other one is called Zcoin Bitcoin. And then if I wanted to create a new instance, I could just run this. We have a create script. So you enter your version that you want to use. Let me try to make this bigger. So hold on. So I'll do that again. So create that. For this tutorial, the current bots I'm using are the development bots. So that's what I'll just show you here when I'm creating this new instance. So here you can see I've ran the create script. Now it asks me to enter which version. Typically, users would just use the latest version. So that's the actual release. In this one, I'll use development. We just did a release yesterday. So right now, basically the release that was released yesterday is pretty much the development branch. But this is the one I use for the testing on the server. And then so enter a new name. So this will be something different from the other 2 that I created. So I will just say instance 3. And then you specify a location for where to save the configuration and log files. So here, I just use the default. It just basically took my instance name and appended files to the end of it. So I'll just press enter. And then you can see here, it will show you where the files will be saved on your local directory. So you can see here within that instance 3 files folder, it's created 3 subfolders. There's 3. The 3 are the configurations folder, logs folder, and the data folder. So I'll just hit enter to continue. And you can see just like that, we have another instance up and running. I'm just going to close out of this one. But you can see now if I go back to Docker and list the containers. Oh, that's odd. It didn't make it. Okay, it did make it. So when I hit Docker PS, it's just showing the running containers. Because I exited out of the third one, you can see here it exited. So it's there. It's just not running. So that's how you can create additional bots. So it's pretty straightforward. And then if you look here, if I hit list files, you can see that it's created this new folder instance 3. So that's where the new files will be saved. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. And then we'll go into other parts of the demo. So then so you can see that it's deleted that third folder when I just hit the remove the instance. But that's how you can basically create new instances pretty straightforward. So while we're here, I think one other thing I wanted to show you is, so as you know, you can change the configurations just in the Hummingbot client itself by running the config command. And I'll show you that later as well, and hitting the parameter that you want to change. But one of the easiest ways, if you want to change multiple configurations, is to do it, edit the YAML files themselves. So to do that, for example, if we go into, we'll go into the Hummingbot files folder. So this is the first instance that I had running. So you can see the folders are listed here. If I just go into, say, the conf folder, you can see there are strategies that are already set up. And then if you're running this locally, just for reference as well, I can show you, if you want to know where the files are stored, if you search for application data, yeah, so you can see here, if you've installed on Mac OS or Windows, you can search here on our docs site, and you can select application data, and you can see where those configuration files are stored locally here. But in Docker and Linux here, so we've navigated to the folder. So if I wanted to edit one of the files, so this bot's running, I think, RLC ETH. So if I wanted to edit that file, so when you do it in the client, on the client itself, you have to edit single configurations at a time. But by editing the YAML file, this allows you to set make multiple changes at the same time. So typically, if you're setting a few different things, it's a bit easier to do that by editing the file directly. So, so if I just go to any text editor, so like Vim, for example, here, you can see this has the strategy file. So if I wanted to change multiple things, I could change them directly here. I think actually this, I may need to, so I had a warning that said this is only read only. So let me just close out this first. So I think if you get that warning, then you may have to do sudo or change mod. So I'm just going to do sudo to edit the file. And I'm doing this just because I got a warning. If you notice when I first opened the file on the bottom left, it said you're editing a read-only file. That's because the current user I'm logged in as Ubuntu, the default user. I think this file was made by the system itself, so it's the user I'm using doesn't have the access. So I just have to run sudo to edit it. So now here, if I wanted to change something, I could say, it's like, for example, if I want to change the bid spreads, both bid spreads to, let's say, 1%. Bid and ask spreads, I can do that here. If I wanted to change order refresh times, let's say here. Order refresh tolerance, some of these other configurations. So things like, for example, inventory skew, you can see here, there's a number of variables you need to change. If you're only changing that, you're changing 3 parameters. That's not too difficult to do on the client. So you just have to run config 3 times. But here again, it is I think slightly easier to do that. Same for order levels. So this is where multiple orders mode. You can see there's 4 there's 3 configurations that need to be set there as well. So typically it might be easier. So once you've edited your file, you just exit and save it. So now you can see if I read the file, if I scroll up, you can see it's saved the settings I just changed, and then you can load those up in the bot. So typically that's easier, I think, if you want to change multiple settings. So that's one way to do that. So there's a bit of a lag again. So one sec. So next I'm going to show you how to update it. So again, we have an update script on that we have, and if you want to download these scripts, we have a guide on our doc site. You can see things like Docker commands. Oh, these are the Docker commands. So if you want, so if I just searched under operation Docker commands, so some of the scripts I'm running, they're basically just run multiple like Docker commands, but they've just been basically added to these scripts so that if you need to run multiple, it just automates that for you. It also helps like when I run update script, it knows, it sets the file locations and file folders. So it's basically, you can do it all in just native Docker commands, but our scripts are intended to just automate that process a little bit. And you can see here, if these are how you would download the files, the scripts, if you wanted to run it locally. You just copy and paste. For example, on Mac OS, I just copy and paste this. This would download the scripts to my local machine, or since I'm in here on the Linux version, I would use the Linux commands. And that's how I got these scripts. So here, going back to our server, so I run the update command, development branch, Hummingbot instance, yes. Okay, so now it should update. So there, that's it. So what it's doing now, it's deleted the instances, and then it's deleted the old image, so the old Hummingbot development Docker image, and so now it's downloading and installing the new one. So that's it. So you can see it's already updated them, so it has the latest version. One other thing with Docker, which is useful, is if you want to verify which version you're using. So you can run Docker inspect, let's say the Zcoin instance. There's just waiting for the delay. That's all right. Okay. It's having a delay when I'm entering commands because of my internet, unfortunately. So when I hit Docker inspect and the instance name, I can see here, if I scroll up, I can see which version I'm using. So this is the branch I'm using and the latest version and when I last updated it. Okay, so that's how basically you update quickly. And then, so we can jump right in. So I'll load up one of the bots. Okay, I'm a bit of a delay at the moment. So one sec. I guess while we wait for that, because it seems to be a bit stuck. Oh, I think it loaded. Okay, let me try that again. Okay, so it should be starting up the instance now. Okay, there it is. So When I first start, so I'm going to load up one of my old configs. So here. So if I run config, I can see all the parameters. If you recall, when I showed you editing in the YAML file, you can see that it's updated. So the bid spreads are what I changed. So to 1% and auto refresh time of 45 seconds. So those are updated because I changed the YAML file and it's reading the latest YAML file. So just jumping right in, I guess, so obviously you could always see, follow along in what I'm doing on the docs. So the first kind of feature I'm gonna run is show you is the kill switch. So I'll just search for that here. So kill switch is a pretty good safety feature. So what it does is, if at some point in time the bot incurs a loss, or you specify a certain threshold, for example here it says 5%. So what this allows you to do is, if it hits that threshold, it will stop the bot. So this is kind of a safety feature. If for some reason the bot is incurring losses, you can stop your operation. So this is a good safety feature to enable, and we generally recommend users to set this. We've also seen some other users use it the other way around. So we have folks who set it as to lock in profits threshold. So rather than say -5%, they'll put 5%. So if ever their bot incurs or accumulates a gain of 5%, then it will stop the bot. And then the reason for doing that is to just lock in the profits they've realized. But the more conservative way, obviously, is to configure it to help against any losses. So if we run config, there's two variables that needs to be updated. So there's the kill switch enabled and kill switch rate. So here, I would just say yes, I would enable the kill switch. And then the other thing is the kill switch rate. So here, I'll just use the example again, so -5%. And then, so if I run config, you can see that that's set here. And this is not in the strategy file. This is in the configuration, the global file. So if you are editing it in the file directly and not through the client, like I showed just now, you would go to the config global file rather than the strategy file. And then, so moving on. So we have another feature called field order delay. If I go back to here, so field order delay, what this is basically a feature that helps against, tries to help against trending markets. So basically what it does is, if one side of your quotes gets filled, so when you're market making, you place both bid and ask orders. If one side gets filled, what it would do is it would delay replenishing that side for a specified number of seconds. So what this kind of helps is, if we go to, I think, so here, so what it does, it tries to help against trending markets. So this is a scenario which is not great for market makers, where prices are going one way persistently over a period of time. So what field order delay at least helps is, if let's say if your order gets filled, let's say your buy order gets filled here, by default, the bot would just puts a new buy order right away. And then, so what happens if it keeps doing that sequentially, then your bids could keep getting filled immediately. So what the field order delay does, it introduces a delay. So if your bid order gets filled, it will pause, not replenish that order until a later point in time. And hopefully at that point in time, the market's either stabilized or stopped trending as much. So that's, in order to configure that, there's a field order delay parameter. So here's how long do you want to wait before placing the next order. So in this case, you can use, let's say 60 or 90 seconds. You may want to use more, but we just use 90 seconds. So that's a typical feature that helps tries to help against trending markets. So I guess one question from William, can the kill switch be set to a floor and ceiling at the same time? Actually, right now, no, it's only set to one way so far, but that's something we can suggest as a feature in the future. And then, so moving on, so that's field order delay. Another feature to help against trending markets, or just another safety feature, well, safety feature, also portfolio management feature, is we have inventory skew. So going back here to the docs, so what inventory skew does is that it's a setting that allows you to specify a target base and quote asset mix by market value. So what that means is, for example, in this bot, the the base asset is Bitcoin, the quote asset is Tether, and in this one, what happens is if you don't set inventory skew, the bot will just continue to create orders. It doesn't pay attention to what your current asset mix is, so it doesn't care if you're 100% even on Bitcoin and 0% in Tether. It will just try to make orders as long as you have inventory to get orders on both sides. So you can see here in this configuration, this one, and this also is showing multiple orders, but you can see here that the order amounts that this bot specified are 0.002 Bitcoin. So there, as long as there's enough inventory, by default, it will try to make those orders at those sizes unadjusted. So what inventory skew does is if you specify that, so here, let's say you specified 50%, and this is also kind of a helpful feature for portfolio management, because basically the goal of the market maker is typically you're trying to capture profits by crossing bid ask. So basically by getting your bid orders and sell orders filled at roughly approximately equal rates. So you're trying to basically capture the differential that we've called the bid ask spread. And so you're trying to basically do that round trip, so buy and sell at spreads as much as often as possible. So by setting inventory skew, that helps you to maximize that probability, because you can imagine if you don't have this set, if your inventory is getting skewed or swung around one way or the other. For example, if you're 100% Bitcoin, then you do a few more trades and then you end up 100% Tether. The problem there is then obviously you can't create both bid asks. So if you're 100% Bitcoin, you can only place ask orders, and you can't place buy orders because you're basically 100% Bitcoin. And so in that case, you're not able to really effectively capture the bid ask spread, which was kind of the original goal in the first place. So this kind of helps you manage that. So when you set inventory skew here, you can see here, it uses the same order configurations as the previous bot. So what I mean by that is the 0.002 order amount. But here you can see, since we specified a 50% target ratio, the bot currently has a mix of 25-75%. So it's underweight Bitcoin, so it's below the 50%. So what it does here is it adjusts your orders sizes to try to get you back closer to that 50%. So you can see here the bid orders are being adjusted by 160%, and the ask orders are adjusted to 40%. So you can see that here. So the buys, although the original size indicated was supposed to be 0.002, it's adjusted that here to 0.003. And you can see here, these are the original orders that would have been placed in this column, amounts original, and then adjusted are the actual sizes being placed that have been adjusted for that for the current mix. So how we do that here in the bot is there's three variables we have to change. So the inventory skew enabled, inventory target base percentage, and then inventory range multiplier. And I'll explain what inventory range multiplier is in a second. I'll just show you first is how to configure those settings. So actually this one, I think this bot already has it configured. So I can see that here it's true 50 and 1. So those are the defaults. So obviously if I wanted to change that, so to skew enable, so it's already true. Obviously I can just set it to true or false. But say I wanted to change one of the other ratios, say that target percentage. Right now it's 50. For some reason, let's say I wanted to change it to 40, 60. So now the inventory target is targeting 40% base. So in this case, this bot is RLC ETH. So the base token is RLC. So if by setting it to 40, what that means is I'm trying to maintain a mix of 40% RLC versus 60% ETH in terms of market value. And then the range multiplier, by default is 1. Here I'll set it to, let's say, to 2. So what that is, what inventory skew range multiplier is it kind of specifies a range in which, so it's based on the amount of orders, so the amount of orders that you're intending to place. So that kind of sets the size of the range by default. So what that does is here, you can see that the range specified is it's a band in which the bot will continue to place both bid and ask orders. So even here, even though the 25% is quite a bit away from the 50%, it will still continue to place both buy and sell sides as long as you're within this inventory range band. If you set it to something smaller, so here in this case, like we've set the inventory skew multiplier to 0.5. So we've narrowed the allowable band. So you can see here, now the range is 29% to 70%. And then my current mix is 25%. So I'm actually falling outside of the band. What happens here is that it will only create buy orders, and it will temporarily, as long as this condition persists, it will stop creating the sell orders. So what this does, it kind of helps you get back to the 50% a bit quicker, because even here, because even though you've adjusted sizes, there is still the possibility that your sell orders will continue to be filled. So in this case, you temporarily pause that, and then it tries to get you back to the 50% a bit more quickly. So that's the inventory skew configuration. That's typically helpful. I think we generally recommend that. It helps prevent you being swung around too much by going long or switching like 100% quote to ask. And again, it helps you kind of maximize the profitability of being able to capture bid-ask spreads. So then in this latest version, so just moving on. So in the latest version 0.27.0, which we released yesterday, we added 2 more features which are pretty useful. So one is order refresh tolerance and one is price band. So what order refresh tolerance is so it actually, this kind of helps so that it helps optimize how frequently you're updating your orders. So what I mean by that is, by default, if you don't have this enabled, the bot, whenever it will just continue to cancel orders and replace them in the regular cadence that's specified by the order refresh time. So in this one, in the sample configuration, every 30 seconds, it will cancel any existing orders if they haven't been filled and replace new ones. What order refresh tolerance does is it gives you a band to say that, okay, if the price hasn't moved outside of this band, so in this setting, it's set to 1%. So if the prices haven't moved by more than that, it will not cancel the existing orders. It will just continue to it will just keep those in place and just continue to monitor them. So what this does, it kind of helps optimize it. So rather than replacing, canceling and replacing orders that are basically pretty similar anyways in terms of price, it will just not update them. So to configure that, there's the order. We just configure the order refresh tolerance percentage, and then so here, so 1% is a lot. So I probably would do something less than that. So we can say here, let's say 0.5%, something like that. So what that does, again, it just makes sure that it helps kind of it also helps with your API rate limits. So if you're running lots of bots, what this allows you to do, it helps you to some degree, and you'd have to kind of experiment with it a bit. So it can help you set shorter order refresh times. So so basically check the pricing and respond more quickly, more often. The problem with that is if you do that too often, and if you have like multiple orders mode where you have many orders at the same time that you're refreshing, the problem there is you tend to come across API rate limits by the exchanges. So Binance, in this example, this bot's running on Binance. If you set the refresh too frequent, then you might hit API rate limits. The other thing is like when you're canceling and replacing orders, then there'll be a moment of time where that order is not in the book because you've canceled it and temporarily are creating new ones. So in that short amount of time, your orders wouldn't be in the market for a brief period of time. And then if you're actually participating in liquidity mining, so our Hummingbot miners, that actually could possibly affect the rewards you're earning, because whenever it refreshes, when we take snapshots for mining every minute, if it just so happens that it's taking a snapshot when your bot was refreshing its orders, then in the miners app for that instance, it would not know that you had orders during that time. So the other new feature that we came out in yesterday's version is the price band. So what price band is it allows you to kind of specify a price band in which you stop trading buy orders or stop creating sell orders. So what that means is, for example, if you set a band, if we'll just click on the page. If you set a kind of a price floor, what that is if the price of the asset falls below the price floor, then the bot only places buy orders. So what that does is if the asset is quote unquote cheap, or if you think it's at a price where it's just really low and a good buying opportunity, what the bot would do, it would stop placing the sell orders and it would only buy. And then what price ceiling is the other way around. If you think that there's a certain limit, there's a certain price where you think the asset is overvalued, or where you'd be happy to sell because you'd realize profits. In that case, the bot would continue to place sell orders above that price, but it would stop creating buys if you think it's either you want a profit take, or you think that the price is too high, that it's risky and you don't want to actually buy any more of the asset at that time, at that price. So how we'd set that here is price ceiling. Actually, I get if I'll just start the bot, because before we set the price floor and ceiling, let's actually check to see what the actual price is of the asset first. So the current it's RLC ETH, the price, the mid price is 0.001656. So I guess in this case, we can say, so 16565. So if I want to set, say a ceiling, I can put let's say 0.002, and then set the floor, let's say 0.001. Then in that case, then those would be set. I'd have to restart the bot, so hit stop and start. But you can see here, one of the other settings I set, if you recall, I set the order refresh tolerance to 0.5%. You can see here in this message, it was 45 seconds after the bots were created. So you can see the original orders were created at 0.2 seconds. Then 45 seconds, it started to create or refresh the orders. But since the price hadn't moved more than 0.5%, it didn't update the prices. So if I hit status, so you can see the age. So in this column age, this is how long these orders have been outstanding. So now they're more than the 45 seconds. It actually tried to refresh again. So So you can see here that it went through 2 cycles where it tried to evaluate the prices to see if whether or not they've changed materially, and if they hadn't, it wouldn't do anything. So, and then you can see here the spreads. So this was multiple orders mode where there are 3 orders on each side, 1%, 1.5%, and 2%. So you can see the current spreads are roughly still close to where they were when we first started running the bot. So that's why it hasn't refreshed those orders. And then, so kind of the last feature I'll go over today. So we have about 50 more minutes, and then I'll open up to some questions. So this one is multiple orders mode. So you can see that it's enabled here. So there's kind of 3 main settings to do that. We call them order levels. So again, if we just go to the docs, if I hit multiple orders, oh, actually here, it's here. So under order levels, under advanced market making order levels. So here, there's basically 3 parameters you need to configure. So order level, order amount, that's the default. So that's the first order. So that's what you would use for single order mode or multiple order mode. And then the order levels, it specifies how many on each side. So in this example, there's 3, similar to the bot that I showed you, the test bot that we've been running. So there's 3 on each side. And then order levels amount, what that is it increments the sizes. So so for as you move wider in prices, it will increase your amount by that much. So if you set 0, it will just keep the constant 0.002. Since we've set this to 0.002, for each subsequent order level, it will add that amount and increment it. So that's why you see 0.002, 0.004, and so forth. And then order level spread that's kind of the incremental change in spread for each subsequent order. So here you can see the bid-ask spreads are 0.5%. So for each subsequent order level, it's adding 1%. So that's why you have roughly like 0.5%, 1.5%, and then 2.5%. So if I wanted to edit that here, order level. So now you can see I have 3. Let's say we wanted to change it to 4. Order level amounts, let's say, so currently we have on this spot, it's around 50, let's say 25, just to change it. And then the last one, order level spread. So in this one, it's 0.5% difference. Let's change it to 1%. So now if I hit stop on the bot, we'll just give it some time to register that. Okay, so it stopped. Now I'll start it. Okay. Okay, so now you can see now it's creating 4 orders on each side. The spreads are, initial spread is 1%, and then we added 1% for each subsequent order level. And then you can also see that the sizes are incrementing by 25. So those are the settings we just changed. And here, because it's running inventory skew, you can see it's adjusted the sizes a bit. And, so in this case, you can see the buy side, it's adjusted. It's pretty close. So it's pretty close to 100%. And then you can see the last orders are the sizes have changed just because I don't have enough available balance to place the one that it's wanted to place by default. So you can see on the outer bounds, those were the sizes were changed just because of my available inventory. So I'll just go to some of the questions right now. So Paulo asks, do we need to stop the bot after each parameter change? Yes. So right now, the one for these configurations, you do have to stop and start the bot. One parameter we do have that's on the fly is the spreads. So that one you can actually change the spreads So we can try that to see if it works. So let's say change the bid spread. It's 1%. So let's say 1.5%, and then let's do the same for ask spreads. 5. So we'll just wait for this to refresh. So I think the spread, we changed that in a version where that should be able, that's the only parameter that's able to change like on the fly without restarting the bot. So other questions. So is there a webinar? Is this webinar available to replay? Yes. So we will be posting this on our YouTube. I'll also place my email on the chat. So if you missed a portion of this, or if you wanted to see a replay of the tutorial, feel free to send me an email and I'll send that to you when it's available. It should be available shortly after, or later today. And then the other question, so Jeff asks, there's a SQL file that records trades, can this be safely deleted or pruned? Yes, so the database is accessible if you're familiar with how to do that. So you can edit it directly if you want, if you know how to natively do that. But for Hummingbot itself, so there's no like native commands, so I couldn't actually modify it using the client. You'd actually have to just do that directly in the database. So there's no native. Okay, so Jeff also asks, what's hang? So I believe you're referring to hanging orders. So good question. So I should have included that in the agenda. So what hanging orders is, it's a mode that's used by several market makers. So what it does is, as you know, when you're placing orders as a market maker, you typically create pretty much like place a pair of bid asks. So in the simplest case, you'll have a bid and ask order at the same time, one of each at the same time. So in this example, you can see here, it's created both orders. So what hanging orders does if you enable it is, there's two parameters. One is hanging orders enabled, so that's just toggling it and enabling it in the first place. And then there's also a second parameter, hanging orders cancel percentage. So the first one, when you enable it, what this does is, if one side of the pair, the couplet of orders gets filled, so in this example, the buy side gets filled, what hanging orders will do is it will actually keep the sell order outstanding, and it will not cancel that. So typically what happens is, if you don't have this enabled, when your buy order gets filled, at the next point in time where it does an order refresh, it will replenish both orders. So it will create an entirely new buy and sell order. So it will cancel the old sell order that wasn't filled, and then it will create a new buy and sell order. So what hanging orders does is, instead of that behavior, if one side gets filled, it actually keeps and maintains the original other half of that pair. So you can see here in this display that original sell order is still outstanding. It's indicated that it's a hanging order, and then in the meantime, the bot has already refreshed and placed new orders, so a new set of buy and sell orders here. So you can see now there's a total of 3. This is a new pairing, so orders 1 and 2 are a new pairing. 0 is a carryover. It's the original order from the first pairs. So the reason you do this is, if markets are kind of range bound or trading within a certain range, or obviously it will tend to move around. By doing this is, you're kind of trying to create the possibility that the sell order at some point in time prices will move and that sell order will be filled. And so if that happens, then what's happened is you've basically effectively locked in your bid ask spreads. So here, when the original orders were placed, the bid ask spread was roughly, let's say 1%. So the buy was roughly at 0.01. The sell was at 1%. So if you're able to capture the bid ask spread, so round trip it or cross the market is what it's called. That's when you're basically able to buy and sell. So if both orders get filled, you've effectively locked in 1.01. So obviously the 1% spread on the sell side, the 0.01 sell spread on the buy side. So your net profitability for this kind of couplet, this pair of trades, is 1.01%. So by doing it this way, by creating hanging orders, you're trying to lock in as many of those kind of bid-ask spreads as possible. So the other kind of parameter that's relevant is hanging orders cancel percentage. So what this does is, okay, in this case, in this example, so the buy side got filled and it looks like prices are moving downwards. So you can see that the original sell price for the original order, the spreads are getting wider. So at some point in time, if the market moves away from your order so much that it becomes unlikely that that will be filled. So here, if we set this, hanging orders cancel percentage instead to 1, in that case, so when the prices have moved, so now that the spread's 1.26, it will just then cancel that order. So it's not shown in this example, but the behavior is like if we change this, if we had this set to 1% rather than, or 1.25% rather than 2%, in this case, since when the next time it evaluated the prices, and the price then corresponded to 1.26%, which is above the threshold of 1.25. In that case, it would cancel them. So what that does is it just cleans up the orders, because again, if it's moved away by a certain percentage, it may become unlikely that that order will eventually get filled. So then it will just kind of clean it up. So that's what that hanging orders cancel percentage indicates. So another question is, so would you recommend using hanging orders and inventory skew, as you believe you should not use them together? Yeah, I think that I would probably say that's safe to say. You can try that. You may not want to use them together because they're not exactly, so because the bid and asks are kind of not the same size. So in this case, like they're exactly the same size and you're trying to capture just the bid-ask spread. Because inventory skew does try to adjust for sizing based on inventory, yet they don't actually work together that well. So it's probably recommended that you shouldn't use them at the same time.